YPC. Thank you, Laura. Really quickly, anyone who is online, if you could just take a moment to, in the chat, drop in your name, the organization that you're representing, and the part of the state that you're from. And while folks are doing that, really quickly, we'll do some round table introductions. So, Vanessa?
Sure. Vanessa Spartan, I'm the Bureau Chief of Transportation. Thank you. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Martin Rugarola, the Assistant Director of Transportation and Land Use with Mark.
Good afternoon, Mike Moyardi with KDOT. I'm our Chief of Transportation Planning.
And I'm Eric Rogers. I work with Michael at YPC.
Jenny Kramer, I'm the Bike Ped Coordinator at KDOT.
I'm Matt Messina. I'm our Transportation Planning Manager at KDOT. Corey Davis, Assistant Chief of Planning.
And Ron Acapula, I'm Director of Transportation and Environment at the Mid-America Region.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
And Michael, in the chat, we have several folks from Harvey County.
Yes.
AARP. Bike Walk Wichita. And a few others.
Excellent.
Jumping in now.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we also have Laura Steele, our Director of Education and Council Member from the City of Westwood on as well. Thank you everyone for taking the time to meet today. Just wanted to give a little bit of overview for the purpose of the meeting, what we'll be talking about, and before I hand the reins over to KDOT. So as everyone in this room is familiar, the federal government adopted the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law recently, and there's a lot of information in there, but obviously for everyone in this room, the thing that's most pertinent is the aspects of the bill which speak specifically to active transportation, walking, rolling, biking, transit. And so we know that KDOT has been doing a significant amount of work around this already, and we wanted to have this meeting between stakeholders and KDOT leadership to really learn more about what all is being worked on and how to move those things forward. I do want to take a moment to thank Mark for hosting us here today and for hosting this meeting, and for KDOT staff and leadership for taking the time to meet with us. To give people just a little bit more background, following the adoption of the law, a small group of bike ped advocates, including Bike Walk KC, Topeka Community Cycle Project, Bike Walk Manhattan, the American Heart Association, and Bike Walk Wichita, sent a letter to KDOT basically asking for a little more detail about the implementation of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law with regards to active transportation. And we were very surprised and pleasantly surprised when we heard from Michael Moriarty to have this meeting and to have an opportunity to discuss all of this further. In really short order, there's really kind of four key aspects of the law that we asked about. Section 11109 deals with surface transportation block grant and transportation alternatives. Section 11111 deals with the Highway Safety Improvement Program. Section 11119 deals with safe routes to school. And then finally, section 11206 deals with increasing safe and accessible transportation options. So basically, the way that we want that this meeting is set up to work is that we're going to give the floor and the mic over to KDOT staff to talk a little bit more about some of these aspects of the plan. But the bulk of our time today is really going to be about having a dialogue between the KDOT staff as well as the stakeholders, so that we can ask questions, get understanding, and really just make sure that we're all pedaling the right direction with regards to improving active transportation in the Sunflower State. So again, I really want to thank everyone for being here, and without further ado, I will pass it over to Matt Messina. And one last thing, this meeting is being recorded, so people can see this after the fact as well. So Matt, thank you.
Does it matter to go up here?
Yeah, you can go there. So.
All right. So thank you, everybody. Really appreciate this opportunity. It gives us a platform to be able to share all the work that we have been doing, such as Michael said. First and foremost, while the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law is a bill, and it these are the initials of the bill. It's actually bipartisan infrastructure law, so that is just an error on my part. That was a slap in the forehead moment when this meeting started. Anyway. That's probably gonna be covering some stuff, that toolbar. Is that on my end? I can,
It's still online, but you could slide it down.
okay.
All the way out.
All right. So just as Michael had mentioned, this is basically a response to the letter that was submitted to the secretary. That letter, I'm sure everyone has had a chance to review and participate in some of those contents. It had two overarching recommendations. One of them to be preparing the state agency to begin using a safe system approach to practices for transportation projects. And then also to consider all users in the transportation network, whether that be the state system or local systems. You'll see me reference that throughout the rest of the presentation as complete streets. Michael mentioned the 4 priority sections of the bipartisan infrastructure law, the focus being on transportation alternatives, safe routes to school, the highway safety improvement program, and the safe and accessible transportation options. And we'll give a brief look at what we've done so far to date under the planning process related to the Kansas Active Transportation Plan update, which has not been updated since 1995. We'll look at a couple of its projects and discuss the process of how we got to where we're at today. Just no longer advancing. Is that on my end?
Should be- Oh, there you go.
Okay. All right, so the first, okay, sure, this morning, sorry. Yeah, that seems to be the trick. So looking at the overarching recommendations and the safe system approach, this is a federal requirement, and KDOT is in the process of seeing how that would be incorporated into our activities at the agency. We are very much looking forward to the vulnerable road users assessment, which is also has a requirement to use the safe system approach. And KDOT also has a plan in place to update the 2024 Strategic Highway Safety Plan, which is a plan that includes all roads, not just highways, utilizing the safe system approach. Further guidance on this is going to help us figure out what our approaches will be and what the processes are and where we can begin to incorporate things. But a couple of the key elements of a safe system that we certainly need a whole lot more information on what our roles would be in that post-crash care and the vehicle design realms of a complete safe system. The other recommendation was the consideration of all road users in transportation projects. We are a multimodal agency, and we do consider all road users in our projects. And we recognize that there is more work that can be done to demonstrate that. A federal requirement mandates that states and MPOs use a minimum of 2.5% of their planning funds for such activities. And throughout the past 2 years, as we've worked on developing the active transportation plan, we've come to a conclusion with some of its products, such as a investigation of an agency's complete streets policy, that it is essential to be able to provide the safety and convenient transportation for all road users, especially those that are most vulnerable. And in this plan, it's likely that the final product will make the recommendation for KDOT to develop, adopt, and implement a complete streets program. Now looking into those priority sections of the infrastructure law, the first target being the surface transportation block grant with the TA set aside. That's the Transportation Alternatives Program that KDOT administers. Some of the larger metropolitan areas get their own pot of funds to administer that program. And we had quite a successful program in the past decade where we've been able to demonstrate that we do expend our funds in a timely manner and that we look in the future to be able to maintain that good performance. When it comes to the transfer of funds, we've been committed to only transferring fund when it's an appropriate decision. And when that transfer also results in what would have been a TA eligible project to begin with. An example being a transit agency applied for transportation alternatives funds to install bike racks and make bus stop improvements. It made the best decision to transfer those funds actually into federal transit authority dollars so that they can carry out that project more efficiently. Beyond that, there's no interest really in transferring those funds because we have an oversubscribed interest in that funding pot in the state. Looking at providing matching assistance, this is something that we've been exploring for quite a while, and we're very excited to see that Bill actually supports this and makes notation to how that could work between programs. We're now on that portion where we can find out how that would actually work within our agency and how we can do it in an equitable and ethical manner. We're waiting a little bit more program guidance to be able to figure out how that could be applied and how we'd be able to monitor, track, and report back on the funds. So we are looking forward to that. And another one being to offer technical assistance. I'd have to admit that our technical assistance that we've provided in the past was limited, and we've continued to make progress year after year from learning from things that weren't working quite well. Our TA program manager, and I'd say the past three that have existed, have made this an effort to be able to expand the reach of the program into rural and western parts of the state specifically, but also into communities that we don't hear from and with an interest in applying for the program. This is not a one person or even just a KDOT job. We look for ways to provide additional support to be able to provide this technical assistance. And we're also currently looking at opportunities to provide agency assistance with administering the program and other pedestrian and bicycle related projects. So an example of the collaboration that's been done to be able to provide that technical assistance for this program, you can look at this highlight from Eastern Kansas. This was a cross-sector collaboration with the Sunflower Trail Cohort put together by the Sunflower Foundation and the Pathways community, which is Blue Cross Blue Shield program. And the TA program manager coordinated with the two managers of those programs to see where wants, needs, and desires were overlapping by evidence of interest in at least two, if not all three of these programs. And some of these programs help at that planning level. And once that planning level is done, then there's assistance with developing of an application. And once that's done, an application is submitted to KDOT that is community driven and a high quality product, which leads to success in the program to being a recipient of funds. So this is just a high level overview of what's going on in Eastern Kansas, but this is happening across the state with more solutions to come. So continuing on with another couple points for the TA program, there was the recommendation for staffing the program. We do have a full-time transportation alternatives program manager, which is currently Jenny Kramer, that was introduced earlier. But there's also a recommendation for a safe routes to school coordinator. This is something that we've also been interested in providing. Unfortunately, when IIJA was written and then passed into the bipartisan infrastructure law, the money did not carry over to support the program. However, it did stay recommended as a eligible program, and agencies are still encouraged to develop standalone programs. So I'll get more into that with extra slides in just a moment. Providing funding assistance to support design and preliminary engineering. This is something that's also been on I'd say a progressive upward trend over the past few years under our TA program. And looking at safe routes to school, we've also been promoting and encouraging anyone that is interested to begin considering high schools because it is eligible, and usually half of that population is either not of age to drive or does not have access to a personal vehicle to be able to drive. So other options are always needed. And then coordinating between the safety dollars and the transportation alternatives dollars. Again, this is something that we're very interested in. It would give us an opportunity to provide additional match support for local communities, especially those with high need. But we are still awaiting some guidance to understand those eligibilities to see how that would work within Kansas and KDOT. And just to pause here, are there any moments that we're looking at addressing questions in the chat, or we wait until towards the end?
I lost them right now.
Okay. I can continue on to those. So the recommendation of, high school eligibilities and supporting preliminary engineering and planning and design work for safe routes to school. This is information provided from the most recent round of transportation alternatives programs that KDOT administered. We have increased the dollar amount to support master plan development. And that's in addition to the additional external support with those other foundations. We've created the new dollar amount category that's specific to the 4 E's that are not engineering related. And then we've also created the new category to fund the preliminary engineering and design work of up to $75,000. And then under that bar there is the construction component to these projects, which does not have any defined limit. But it used to be $250,000 and then I believe $400,000 at one point. So again, like I mentioned earlier, year after year or cycle after cycle of this program, we take the feedback from the communities that are interested in these programs. And then especially the ones that we end up not getting an application for, or that we were getting poor quality applications from, we would discuss with them what the barriers were and what their interests were. And we actually found out that even from successful applicants, that some of the dollar amounts were constricting to their plans because it wasn't allowing them to apply for a corridor's worth of needs because the dollar amount was limited. So for construction, we remove that so that any community can apply for how big or small of a infrastructure job they wanted to do. Otherwise, they were seeing progress every few years with construction, with segment by segment. It was very an example of this success is we've had 2 communities now that have gone through the entire process of getting funding assistance for their plan development. And then after completing that plan, they became eligible to apply for the preliminary engineering. And now they've applied for for a construction project. So that means across all funding phases of this project, they were able to get funding assistance through the KDOT Transportation Alternatives Program. And I'd like to point out that one of them, I think, completed their plan. Was it 2007? That old, 2007, and had been waiting for an opportunity to get assistance with design. And then once design got done, assistance with construction. So this is very helpful for those communities. So even before Bill, we started investigating ways that we could enhance the state's Safe Routes to School program. I've kind of always said that we don't really have a program. We have an eligible category underneath the Transportation Alternatives Program. So we don't have the internal infrastructure to be able to support, monitor, and assist with developing more of that programmatic elements to Safe Routes to School. We had everything we needed to be able to execute construction projects, but beyond that was very limiting. So we are looking to rebuild this program and see if there are ways that we can make connections with safety funds to be able to support this development, But like I showed on the last slide, our TA dollars are able to support this growth as well. So a little glimpse into the currently planned draft restructuring of this. It does call out for the need for a safe house to school manager or coordinator to be in the lead. This would fall under the bicycle pedestrian coordinator or the transportation alternatives program manager. And, you know, we wouldn't really like to do anything without the assistance of a committee that would be advising us on what works. We have a lot of different community types and sizes throughout the state. So we want to hear what all the needs are to be able to make something that's suitable for everyone. Getting into the other sections of the bill, the Highway Safety Improvement Program. There is the requirement to perform a vulnerable road user safety assessment. And remind me what the deadline is to have one completed by. So
October 2023.
the deadline being October 2023. And KDOT is currently in the process of reviewing consultants' submittals to the RFP to be able to carry out this work and produce the documents that are required of this assessment. The RFP specifically called out that there will be stakeholder engagement, and it is likely that members from the core team throughout the active transportation planning process, which would be the external members to the KDOT staff, would be called upon for assistance with this. And we also currently have a pedestrian and cyclist emphasis area team that supports the development and progress of the state's head bike focused chapter within the strategic highway safety plan. From this vulnerable road user assessment, some of the products will include mapping of fatal and serious suspected injuries crashes, and some preliminary maps are in development and will be made available. However, doing a little bit deeper dive into the analysis for heat or risk associated maps is going to take some time and will be a product of the finished vulnerable road user assessment. Another recommendation for the HSIP funds to support non-infrastructure. Again, we are exploring this opportunity. We're waiting for further guidance. Likely once the vulnerable road user assessment guidance comes out, it could be provided within that. And that expected date of that guidance to become available is later this year. The final section of focus is section 11206, which is to increase safe and accessible transportation options. This is where there was the requirement for state agencies and state Department of Transportation agencies and metropolitan planning organizations to use at least 2.5% of their planning funds. This is to help support the development of complete streets related work and tasks and additional items. And there is a caveat to this, that caveat being that, or not, an exclusion or an exception to this rule. And that's if the state or MPO can prove that they already have a complete streets policy or plan that leads to a list of complete street projects and activities that would be eligible under the planning fund use, and they would not be required to spend 2.5% because it's more likely that they are way beyond that if they have that incorporated into their system. Current work related to the active transportation plan provides further opportunities for KDOT partners to develop complete streets policies and standards. With that, we're looking to be able to provide trainings. Those trainings wouldn't just be isolated within KDOT or closely related partners, but also to local communities and consultants, anyone that's interested really, depending on the training that would be available. This will help us to develop a program structure, something that would give us a platform to use the complete streets policy more effectively, that would benefit and incentivize local communities to also have complete streets policies. And then also to develop additional resources. I'm gonna slide this that you've seen. Let's do that. Once this all becomes available, this information will be announced and made public on the, I don't know which webpage yet, but we've been totally revamping our active transportation plan and our transportation alternatives program web pages to now just have a wealth of resources and information. And it will be shared, expected to be shared just as such. So some of the products from the Kansas Active Transportation Plan is we have a final draft version of the plan right now going through the approval process at the executive level. We can expect that relatively soon. A planning toolkit for small and mid-sized communities. We have often found that smaller communities that want to have a project done hasn't really gone through the planning process to establish what type of facility they want, where they want it to go. And all they really know is a need. And this document helps them to put together a plan that also helps them be a little bit more competitive when it comes to application time. It also gives KDOT an opportunity to be aware of what the community's wants and needs are. And when we have upcoming projects, we can make that connection that there is a need in an area and we can coordinate that. There's also the active tourism toolkit. A lot of communities in Kansas are looking for ways to diversify or improve their local economy, and active tourism has been a relatively low cost, high return option for some. That photo up there in the corner with the toolkit is from Humboldt, Kansas, which was recently named one of the best places in the country to visit by, I believe, the New York Times. We did perform a crash analysis for pedestrians and cyclists at the very beginning of this process that helped us to get a better understanding of just how many crashes were occurring year over year, who was involved, and also the roadway characteristics, such as if it was a 2-lane rural road or a 4-lane urban road with a 2-way left turn center lane. You know, all that matters and influences decisions made for applying appropriate countermeasures through training and education and facility design. We also did an economic impact analysis to be able to get a better understanding from a Kansas point of view, but as well as peer state points of view at the return on investment in active transportation facilities, not just at the recreational level, but also at the utilitarian or transportation related level, which in a sense also supported the active tourism toolkit and supports the justification for utilizing funds for such projects. I believe it was said in this slide, recording will be made available, so the links are active in here as well. I believe each document is hyperlinked. Jenny, is that right? Okay. So that encouragement to have locals also produce plans and complete streets policies. I keep moving that thing around. So this is a new plan and policy registry that was created, which once a plan or policy is submitted through this portal, it gets turned into something in this active web map, story map. So you could look into the community and see just how many plans are related to them. If there are multiple, a community could have a complete streets policy, a safe routes to school plan, and an active transportation plan. And all of those could be existed in one location. So you click on them, you can see their catalog and explore what they put into their planning documents. And that link at the bottom there is mine as well. So again, this helps us to be able to track where these exist, to be able to monitor what kind of items are being proposed so that we can coordinate with them if there's any overlap. And then also, would hopefully eventually come into play when we're looking at evaluating places that are promoting that they have a complete streets policy or a plan in place, and it's easy for us to track it down through this portal instead of having them submit paper or digital copies for us to thumb. A couple of the other things. Equity is a big thing throughout all the work that we've been doing for the past few years related to the active transportation plan. Within that, we also had a demographic equity analysis performed related to a few key characteristics that you can see in the right column of the map, or I'm sorry, the left column, that being people of color, the density of people of color, adult and youth populations, zero car households, limited English proficiency, low income. And I believe persons of color, zero car household, and low income were a few of the recommendations made for having additional consideration for in the joint letter that was submitted. And we worked with our consultant with Tool Design Group to be able to put this together, and we've got a few examples of how that turned out. A lot of information going on here. So again, the slides will become available, and you'll be able to zoom in and out and see just the level of detail that the analysis provides. This one being the population density of people of color, with a single dot being 100 people. If you look into the Wichita insets or the urban corridor inset, you'll see, it is heavily populated with communities that we do anticipate a level of additional consideration. Same going for zero car households. Obviously, this is important to the work under the active transportation plan. We believe this gives us a little extra insight into areas where walking and biking is not necessarily a choice, but the only option, and also the relationship to transit dependency as well. We looked at the median household income too, to be able to get an understanding of income levels and how that can be played into the considerations. And I believe that is all that we had, and that addresses each of the things that you had in the letter with some additional items. And we now look forward to that conversation or questions if we have any that were submitted through the chat or
That's in the chat.
in this room. Okay.
So we'll just let folks know if you have questions that you want to submit through the chat, or feel free to. And while they're doing that, I think I did have a couple of questions that I had as you were going through here. Let me see here. So with the Safe Routes to School restructuring proposal, obviously a lot of that appears to be happening kind of within KDOT, but are there ways that advocates can help to support efforts to try to advance that? Because we really do want to help to create a program and get that back off the ground if that's possible.
Yeah, so I believe that there would definitely be a way. We have not had the conversations of what a program looks like, and we know that we're going to need additional conversations to see what the needs are again. Because what we have been doing is kind of more of a response to an unsuccessful application year over year, not that consistent step 1, step 2, step 3 conversation with the same group like we did throughout the development of the active transportation plan. I think that would be much more helpful. And as you can see here, before any other staff or anything else that's being mentioned, a lot of support for that advisory committee, right, to be expected to, right? Because That's a bit more cross sectoral, I guess, with education, transportation, locals, enthusiasts, health. So we'd be looking forward
Sure.
to that. Yes. It's also, we also recognize it as a very popular program category for the transportation alternatives program, so we want to make it stronger.
Good.
For that.
Yeah. Ron?
Yeah, Matt, on the registry of complete streets policies and plans, many of the NPOs, including Mark, have regional complete streets policies in place. Is a local government able to leverage those regional policies or plans as part of the requirements for these programs?
If what they're proposing exists in it, I would say so. And again, this is sort of all just in its infancy. We don't even have the plan completely finalized yet, but that is what we would expect. If the proposal of the project is also supported in that regional plan, we're looking a little bit more for that localized version. And I think that's actually a good way to bring up the Safe Streets for All, maybe, because I accidentally left out a couple slides that she provided.
So I think you've all heard of the Safe Streets for All program as part of BIL. KDOT decided to do a pilot program this year where we're providing local match assistance to any of the agencies that decide to apply for the planning funds, not the implementation funds. And I'm happy to say we have 24 agencies or partnering agencies that have indicated intent to apply in Kansas. So I fingers crossed, I think Kansas stands a pretty good chance of competing on the federal stage, some of these agencies. And they range from small governments to large to regional organizations all over the state, really.
Yeah, good question. That's, something that we'll need to figure out and narrow down a little bit more. Appreciate that.
But I do imagine that there's a potential out of Safe Streets for All projects, if they do these plans that they identify by need that then can be referenced for TA or safe routes or.
So, with the demographic equity analysis, is it possible that this initial list here in terms of mapping could be expanded? Because I know one of the questions that we had heard from our partners at Whole Person, which deals primarily with disability, is being able to map out data such as this for people living with disabilities.
Yeah, in other little quick dives, we have looked at persons with disabilities as a determining factor of potential need for active transportation or transit. And that could be something that would be reincorporated in the future. Just for this purpose, it was a limited scope and a limited budget for its part, but that's something we can continue to take considerations for.
Are there any questions on the chat?
No questions in the chat yet, but on the Safe Streets for All technical assistance, I did just want to thank you all for doing that, because some of the national partners we work with, like the Safe Routes Partnership and the American Bicyclists, noticed the program and called it out themselves as a good example of what a DOT could do. So I haven't really seen any others do something similar. So
They
kudos
may
to you
not
all.
be able to leverage, you have to leverage state dollars in order to do that. Some states may not have that ability or flexibility to do it. So we're very fortunate.
I did have a question on some of the things where you're waiting on federal guidance.
Yeah.
Probably several things. Do you all have any sense of when that might be coming, or just kind of waiting with everybody else to learn what's going to happen?
Tried to add that for the ones where we're saying that. So like the vulnerable road user assessment guidance, I believe they say, October, November.
1 year past when bill passed, the FHW has a deadline. They
Yeah, well, we had a deadline in a different program too that was not met, so.
Yeah.
I think it's really needs to expect in late 2020, provide them a little bit of buffer and ourselves. Because this is a transformative bill. People are figuring it out at the federal level too. But one thing I'd like to say about that, like, while we are waiting on federal guidance, we're not making progress towards these initiatives. I don't know when the decision will be made for the vulnerable road user assessment, but the submittals have been provided, and the RFP was just written with language reflecting that part of the work is pending on guidance coming out. Other guidance is more understanding of the relationships between dollars, and not so much, we don't even know if it's going to become part of a certain guidance, but we do know that it's going to take a lot of dialogue back and forth with federal departments and other states, and it can just take a little bit of time.
Yeah, I think an example of how the language indicates that you can use 10% of HSIP on non-infrastructure activities. So that could be used for bike ped stuff. It could be used for other types of safety efforts that we do on kind of the soft side. But what we don't know yet is we have kind of strings tied to those safety dollars of reporting requirements and evaluation requirements. What do we do with non-infrastructure that we have to normally do with infrastructure projects? We're trying to understand exactly how that would work out.
Do you have a question, Mark?
Yeah, could I ask a question? I'd like to ask a question on the active transportation plan and policy registry, if I could.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we spend a little bit more time talking about the intent of developing this registry, and how much work would you like partners to undertake filling this out? As the Mid-America Regional Council, there is a very large set of planning work and complete streets policies and different activities that happened over the past few years. So is that the type of information that you would be interested in us uploading and updating this website, this registry on, or is it just new work that's happening moving forward? As an example, we have a program where we support local planning activities at the local level, where the Wichita area has a similar program as well. And we have a story map which links out to all these different studies that have happened in the past, in some ways similar in nature to this. So is the intent that all of this would be uploaded to one central registry statewide, or and is that something that you would do? You like us to encourage our members to do in the Kansas City region, or talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I'm gonna try and summarize. I think there might have been 3 or 4 questions. So original intent, who can upload, and then the benefits of it. Is that what you're getting into? And then I'll gladly let Jenny take over on that one. This is one of the elements that she really put together and worked on. Okay.
So, well, going back, you mentioned how the connected planning to the different types of grant opportunities. So like that, having a plan in place for the community is really important to be competitive for any grant application. Having a place to, or having this type of tool to know where they exist, and then we know who to target to get plans in place. Since we have that tool for the small communities, the planning tool, we wanted then to have an official place for them to upload their plans. I did do some work looking at like older plans that existed prior to developing this tool. I tried to collect as many as I could. I didn't get all of Johnson County's. There's quite a few. So, but definitely if they want to go in individually and submit that, it's just really nice to have all these plans and policies like at fingertips. Again, the definition is quite broad. It's really, we want to see plans and policies really focus on active transportation. Sometimes communities have their large transportation plans and like they have a chapter, so that might dilute it a little bit, but it's up to the community to decide if that's like, relevant enough. And also what's really important, what I've noticed is when communities are just embarking on this work, they they like to have examples from neighboring communities, like what they did and what their plan looked like, what their policies look like. So it's a way for them to kind of see people nearby, just because, you know, like someone out in Northwest Kansas, they don't like to use examples from Eastern Kansas, right? Like they don't think it applies to them at all.
Yeah, so instead of sharing, you know, the hard documents with a community that's interested, you know, they have less than 2,000 people there, what a safe route plan looks like for them, so that they know what they're undertaking. It's much easier to direct them to this, and kind of see what's out there for themselves, instead of just us handpicking a few and sharing it with them. Did that get all of it?
I think so. I think the question is, how can we help? How do you envision us helping you
Yeah, so
update this?
the links here, so when the slides get shared, please visit, and if you want to take that on, I don't know if Mark has the capacity or has the access to do it. But what's, you know, being required of these builds, or just sharing it with your member communities might be the best way to do it and encouraging them. If you have anyone that's running into any issues, Jenny's done it on the behalf of communities before. I'd also like to add that there was the additional option where she made it clear to TA applicants to submit their plans through this portal to make our review of applications a lot more simpler as well. Passing around and sharing hard documents in large files. Troubling sometimes.
Nicole Brown, I bet, well, we recently let some of our public health partners know about it. And like Lisa is our chair of the Bike Ped Eat. And she has asked for me to send her an email, like to get it out to all of the community, the CDRR, Chronic Disease Reduction communities, what Nicole Brown is part of. So I think they'll be really helpful in getting those plans uploaded.
So one thing I would just like to ask with especially with the policy, with the statewide policy, but also with perhaps a later iteration of this, is specifically with regards to complete streets policies. The National Complete Streets Coalition has a grading rubric that they use for assessing policies and the assigned scores. If there is an update to this at some point, especially for the complete streets parts, I think it would be helpful to be able to include a question for the people submitting. Has this been graded by the National Coalition? And if so, what has been the score? And I know that if and when Kansas gets going on creating a complete streets policy, that would also be a step to include before finalizing as well.
Yeah, good suggestion.
Trying to see, is there anything else here? Still no questions online?
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Let's see. Well, I think if there really aren't any other questions, I think we can try to wrap up here kind of quickly and give everyone an hour of their day back. In having this meeting, we wanted to give KDOT an opportunity to kind of detail some of the work that they're doing. We really do appreciate Matt, Jenny, Vanessa, and everyone else for taking the time to do this. One of the things that we specifically asked for in terms of next steps was a kind of detailed response so that we could be able to share it with everyone as a supplement to the presentation today. And so it's my understanding that KDOT will be working on that. It'll probably be about a month or so to be able to get everything put together to share with us. But when we get that, we will make sure to share it with everyone who had either registered or attended today. Did a question pop up in the chat, or okay, that's
Do you
fine.
have something you wanted to share, Mike?
I was just gonna ask, I don't think you on the spot,
Okay.
but back to the Safe Streets,
Yeah.
the match pilot.
Yeah.
You might want to mention how much match we're providing and
Sure.
talk about that sliding scale, because that's
Yeah.
one of the best parts.
Yeah. So in the bipartisan infrastructure law, the way that's written is that the local or regional agencies, tribal agencies, or even transit organizations they have to provide 20% of the match. What we did as the pilot was we said, we will provide 10%. And then we have two other kind of bonuses. So if you go in with another partnering agency, so there's some regional coordination, you get another 5%. And if you are a county under 40,000 and a city under, can't remember what the population threshold was on it, but if you're a smaller city and you're a smaller county, either one, you get another 5%. So we potentially can chip in the entire 20% match for these applicants. So.
Just two comments, not questions, but the American Heart Association and the AARP both say that they're excited about the opportunity for more complete streets policies and eager to support local communities however they can.
Well, yeah, well, listen, I certainly don't want to take up more people's time, especially if there aren't any questions or anything. Once again, I do want to take a moment to thank Mark for hosting us this afternoon, and I really want to take a moment to thank everyone from KDOT for taking the time to come to Kansas City to share about this work. Obviously, there's still a lot that needs to be done, be it between the implementation of the law, the development of the Safe Routes to School proposal, finalizing the active transportation plan, and beginning to work on the complete streets policy and program. But this is all a really, really good start to kind of get us all pointing in the same direction. Mike, was there anything that you wanted to add?
I was just going to thank you, the organizations you work with, the advocates, for reaching out to KDOT on this matter. When the secretary got the email, it came over to me, and it was the first thing that came to our mind is something like this, not some written response. You know, we need to get together and start having some conversations. So just so happy that you had reached out.
Yeah. So thank you again, Mike, and everyone just kind of keep an eye out. Like we said, this meeting was recorded, so we will make it a point to get this uploaded and shared out with everyone when we get the chance. We will also, like I said earlier, share out the detailed response from KDOT when that is available, and we also look forward to collaborating with you guys on sharing more about the active transportation plan when that is finalized. So if there aren't any other questions or additional comments from anyone online or here, then I think we can go ahead and call the meeting. So thank you again, everyone. Have a good day.